So, Maurice, you're here today representing the EU Reference Lab for Alternatives to Animal Testing, which is within the Joint Research Centre. So can you tell me, where do we stand today on the implementation of alternative methods in biomedical endeavours?
I think we're standing in a good position. We've made, I think, considerable progress in the last 5 to 10 years. There's a lot more awareness now about alternative methods, about the 3 Rs. We see more integration of alternative methods in research programs. And I think, what we're beginning to see, which is wonderful, is people recognizing that alternatives don't stand for compromise or represent a compromise in what they're doing, but in fact an opportunity. Of course, this is depended a lot on the technological development of different methodologies, but also there's a lot more expertise being invested in good design of animal studies if they have to be conducted, much more awareness and training with regard to refinement. Of course, all of that is covered by the directive, but I think also we're seeing this emergence of culture of care. So a lot to be done. Still, really, if we're expecting to expedite, the transition towards a new way of doing biomedical research using alternatives, we have to keep focusing on communication, education, and really.
So when you say a lot to be done, what initiatives are being pursued by the Joint Research Council to promote the uptake of alternative methods in both applied and fundamental research?
So within the JRC, we're a science organisation, part of the Commission supporting EU policies, and in particular this policy represented by Directive 2010/63 for the protection of animals used for scientific purposes. We act as the EU reference laboratory for alternatives to animal testing, and in that role we carry out a number of activities really through the whole life cycle, let's say, of alternatives, right from participating in research and development activities to create alternatives, but also to apply them in a research context. We have a lot of activities in looking at how does one demonstrate the scientific validity of these methods in a way that is convincing to potential end users. And we're very heavily involved in information sharing. We have a database on alternative methods with a number of other tools and a search guide for helping researchers find alternatives, and then of course overall promotion. Very recently actually we have 2 exciting initiatives just kicked off. One is really a systematic review of alternative approaches being used in different disease research fields. One is on respiratory tract diseases and the other one is on degenerative disorders.
Those are huge topics just to pursue,
but already we're seeing that in fact there's a lot of activity going on in that area, and we're excited about communicating that when we've completed the study. And the other thing we're doing also too is we're mapping all the available educational courses and resources that are around the EU, but also further afield, that are contributing to education and training on the 3 Rs.
Do you find you have a lot of engagement from the researchers involved in, say, neurodegenerative disorders?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an openness. I think a lot of people are actually, let's say, doing, using alternatives in their research, but we're getting to a point now where they mightn't be wouldn't necessarily call it 3 Rs related research, because these tools, of course, as they get more mainstream, are just, becoming subsumed into. Exactly. So that's exciting. It's not happening across the board. I think with our survey of these approaches, what we're trying to do is really highlight what success looks like, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, so we sit here today at the Vrije Brussels. So from your perspective, what role can fundamental research carried out at universities play in the implementation of alternative methods?
Oh, I think, the role of universities and the research community within universities is just fundamentally important to advance this area. I mean, this are where, the young minds, the next generation, are being trained and exposed to new scientific methodologies. And so, not only can aspects of the 3Rs and alternatives be incorporated formally into curricula. And VUB is definitely innovative in that sense of incorporating those aspects into mainstream curricula. But also, in the research that's ongoing here, clearly demonstrating, the utility of these approaches, and running symposia like this to raise awareness. And so, incredibly important. And I must say, the impact is clear too.
Yeah. Do you think there should be more funding allocated specifically towards the development of alternative methods at university? Because often we're under the pressures of peer review, publication, and it becomes difficult to pursue these in conjunction with your scientific work.
I do. I think, I think there's some. Often people may give the impression that alternative approaches are a lot cheaper and a lot more accessible. It can be, depending on what you're using, but I think when you're talking about a comprehensive suite of methods that can be used really for cutting-edge research, then you need to have the resources and facilities to support that. So, you need that basic level of investment to build that infrastructure, and not just physical, but also know-how, and then also you need to encourage, that when projects are being defined, the studies are being designed, that really there's an attempt to proactively use those tools.
Yeah, of course. Now, today's joint IC3Rs symposium concludes your commitments as the Franke Chairholder for this year. So what will you take back to the JRC from your experience here?
Well, the first thing is, although it might conclude my, formal presence, here giving lessons and so on, I still intend very much to continue the fruitful collaboration that's been, started with this appointment through to the end of the year. There are loads of things I'll take back. First is just really the motivation I have after witnessing the enthusiasm, the openness, the intelligence, behind the discussions. And so that's really given me a lot of motivation to continue doing what we're doing.
That it's not just superficial.
Yeah, it's genuine. A simple indication of that was when one of the classes I was giving, we had a little on-the-spot survey, and one of the questions was, do you think that we'll see a significant reduction in animal experimentation, in the coming years because of alternatives? And 98% of the people present said yes. That can only be motivating, and that belief is really. I think also a lot of practical, we've enhanced our collaboration now in understanding how educational institutions like VUB are approaching the introduction of 3Rs into the curricula, and also we continue our collaboration in the area of the use of particularly in vitro methods in safety assessment.
Okay, so we look forward to working with you more this year.
Me too.
Okay, thank you, Maurice.